Okay, so it's our first opportunity to talk to you since the events of Tuesday with Jim Rutherford. What did you make of this presser, Jeff?
Yeah, look, I wasn't shocked by the news of the day. At the previous presser, when Jim Rutherford said, we're not going to force him to take the option, we don't want a guy that has his eyes elsewhere. The minute he said that, like, Jim should have come out swinging a giant red flag. To me, that right there suggested that they had some intel that Rick Tocket maybe wasn't long for the job here. So I wasn't shocked that Rick Tocket has elected to step away. As for Jim Rutherford, and unfortunately I had a medical appointment, I couldn't be in the room on Tuesday, but have watched the press conference start to finish, and he doesn't disappoint.
No.
He probably says a little too much, but in this business, we're not going to complain about that by any means. You know, there were a few things there. And look, I thought good for Jim Rutherford for sort of taking us behind the curtain a little bit, where he said that, you know, they had all these positive negotiations. They had talked about summer plans and all the things that they were going to do and training camp and adding to the coaching staff. But why weren't they getting to a resolution? And so, push came to shove ultimately. It sounds by all the reporting that the organization had stepped up in a big way financially, both money and term. And so, again, I'm like a lot of people that think, all right, Rick Tocket walked away because of the current situation, but also the future and a vision here and an opportunity to win. And he's a competitive guy. We know that. You know, I exchanged a text with Rick earlier in the week, and one of the things that he said, and I'm going to paraphrase because I won't get into the text, but he basically said, I poured everything into this job for 2.5 years. And I just think that tells you how much this past season took out of him. And so I guess I understand that there are greener pastures in terms of winning sooner elsewhere around the National Hockey League. And I do expect that Rick Tocket will pop up with one of these jobs that is vacant around the National Hockey League.
The good news for the Canucks is there's only 32 spots, right? There's a finite number of these jobs, but there's a lot of them that are open this summer, Jeff. Do you think the Canucks are anywhere near the top of anybody's list of those vacancies, or are they settling for leftovers here?
Yeah, one has been filled now, and I think the dominoes start to fall. That Mike Sullivan, we all kind of figured it was down to 1 or 2 spots. It ends up being the Rangers. So now if you're Boston and you had designs on Sullivan, you're going to be looking to fill. So I do think we're going to start to see some of the dominoes fall pretty quickly here. Look, the outside hockey world sees the same things we do. There are all sorts of concerns, starting with the future of Quinn Hughes, or maybe starting with the future of Elias Paterson. Take your pick. But beyond that, issues at center ice, the fact that the farm system isn't stocked with grade A prospects, it's going to be a while before they can build this thing back up into any sort of contender status. And that said, I think that, if you're a coaching candidate, and there are levels of candidates, we get that. But for the big names, I think they would be interested in opportunities elsewhere. And so it will be interesting to see ultimately how it all shakes out here. I know Jim Rutherford said that their phone was going to ring. He thought it was fairly attractive. He tried to make the joke about the practice facility that did not land at all. But whoever's coming in to coach isn't going to have a practice facility. We know that. Neither have the last bunch of coaches. So that's life here on the West Coast right now. But they'll make a short list, and they'll have a head coach when the season starts. Mm-hmm. That much we do know.
Yeah, for sure. They won't go coachless into the season. Many Canucks fans are saying this is such a bad look for the organization, Jeff, that Rick Tocket would reject the Vancouver Canucks and ownership, management, roster, some combination thereof, all of the above. What kind of a setback in terms of the brand and the optics is this for you?
Yeah, it's another one. The brand's taken a beating here of late, and that's life. It is remarkable year over year from where they were to where they are right now, and so much of that hinges on the guy that wears number 40 and how quickly they can build it back up. But there is also the stumbling block of Quinn Hughes and his future here, and that's just the reality of the situation. And a new head coach is going to understand that. A new head coach is likely going to have Quinn Hughes to work with at least to start. We still don't know about EP40 and his future with the organization. But, it's not a great look. I don't think anybody could see it as anything but that Rick Tocket had options. Now, he was out of contract. And so, in that regard, it's no different than a player. Like I saw people saying, oh, he quit on the Vancouver Canucks. Well, if that's your logic, then by extension, you got to think that Brock Besser is quitting on the Vancouver Canucks if he plays elsewhere next season. That's not how the hockey business works. You're either in contract or you're out of contract. If you're out of contract, you hold the cards. You get to control your future. And so I don't blame Rick Tocket one bit. I enjoyed working with him from a media standpoint. I learned a ton about the game. And I've told you guys this before. What you see on camera is only a bit. That there were so many times that scrums broke down and he still stood in there for another 10 minutes holding court and going over strategy. And it was fascinating. And I couldn't get enough of it. So I'm going to miss that part of it. But ultimately, he made his decision, and now the Canucks find themselves looking for a fourth head coach in 4 years. And again, Jim Rutherford admitted that, that's difficult. It's difficult on the players. It's tough. Like, not that anybody's feeling sorry for guys like me, but you do want to be able to build a rapport with whoever you're dealing with on a daily basis. And so we'll start that process all over again. But I just feel for the veterans, the guys that have been here, not just Quinn Hughes and Elias Paterson and Thatcher Demko, but Tyler Myers and Connor Garland. Like, these guys have been through the ringer with this organization. And I think at some point, they just have to look elsewhere and think, it's incredible how smoothly some of these organizations run around the National Hockey League, and smooth is not a word that you would used to describe the Vancouver Canucks over the past few seasons.
They may get forced into one of these lanes just by virtue of the situation and the brand damage that you just talked about. But there's 3 lanes the Canucks could go from, 3 pots, if you will, the Canucks could choose names from. Which one do you think, given the demographics of this roster and where everybody is, can they go down a David Carl, Manny Malhotra, Mike Vellucci route, guys with no experience but good resumes? Do they go with second chance guys like Jay Woodcroft and the like? Or do they go tried, true hockey men, old guy category, Laviolette, Gallant, and the likes of those guys? Which do you think fits the Vancouver Canucks the best?
If I'm handicapping the race right now, I probably am establishing Manny Malhotra as the favorite. In-house already, Jim Rutherford has acknowledged that he's going to get on the short list. He's done a terrific job down in Abbotsford. He's familiar with these players and the prospects that he has helped develop and get to the National Hockey League. And we know 16 guys touched both AHL and NHL ice in the Canuck organization this year. So I think there's a world in which you could turn to Manny Malhotra, and for the people at the back that are screaming, first-timer, no experience, look, Manny was a high NHL draft pick. This guy has worked as an assistant in both Vancouver and Toronto, 2 of the toughest markets. He's a smart guy. He's prepared, obviously. He's done a nice job in Abbotsford. The experience of a first-time head coach. What could the game throw at Manny Malhotra at this stage of his career in his mid-40s that he hasn't seen before? But if you have that concern, I'd love the Canucks to go and find that established coach that has been a head coach in the National Hockey League that could work as a mentor but not be the head coach. And I know Rick Bowness isn't looking to get back into coaching at this stage, but that kind of guy, I see Claude Julien on the bench in St. Louis these days. Talk about experience and cup pedigree and all that kind of stuff. And so there are ways that you can insulate and support a younger, newer head coach, but also turn to him and give him the keys. And so I do wonder if that's the path ultimately. But if this is Jim Rutherford's decision, at this stage of his hockey life and his career, can I see him turning to a first-time guy?
Yeah.
I'm not so sure.
How about Alain Vigneault as that senior assistant?
Oh, yeah. I'm sure he wants to get back into the grind.
Hey, he may want to.
No
and
chance.
He coached Manny. We know the respect he had for Manny here.
His feet are up
Why
and he
do
is
you
comfy.
continue to shit on my Alex Burrows and Alain Vigneault coming home dreams here, Blake Price?
I just don't think it's happening.
Okay, so Jeff, hear my mouth on this one. Laviolette. Rutherford hired him. They won a Stanley Cup in Carolina, so there's history there. Established NHL coach, right? No training wheels. He's not learning on the job. Has coached 6 franchises already. probably can't afford to be too picky anymore, and in that regard, likely going to settle for, a good established contract, but not break the bank money. Does he align? Does he satisfy all camps? Ownership, management, previous experience, know him, cheap enough, can get him.
My gut says that it's just not the right fit for this group right here, right now. And I say that fully aware of the history with Jim Rutherford. It is wild, guys, though. The cachet that you get when you win a Stanley Cup.
Mm-hmm.
It's been 19 years since Peter Laviolette won the Stanley Cup. 2006.
Yeah.
And the same went for Mark Crawford and Ken Hitchcock and John Tortorella. They get the cup. They keep getting chances.
Glory lasts forever, Jeff.
I guess so. But there's no statute of limitations on that. And look, Laviolette, the winningest American head coach, this guy has guided teams, 3 teams to the Stanley Cup. Won it once with Carolina.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a proven track record. He knows how to win. I don't have a lot here to knock Peter Laviolette. I'm speaking from my guts telling me
he's
that
just not warm and fuzzy. Yeah, like he's just not a people person.
And I don't know the reasons why when it comes to geography. Again, he's American. Not that that prevents a guy from crossing the border and coaching here, but he's always worked in the East, right? Like, is Nashville as far west?
I believe so.
He has worked for
Well,
whatever.
why did... Surely geography doesn't matter.
No.
You think there's an advantage to knowing the division, though?
I think, yeah, institutional knowledge. And again, it's the information age. There are very few secrets. Peter Laviolette has done some scouting. I'm sure he's done film work on the Vancouver Canucks. Has worked with star players, like all of that. Like those are things that are working in his advantage here. But yeah, I mean, I think to a degree, that's what. Like if I'm checking off boxes of what makes candidates interesting, a guy like Jay Woodcroft not that long ago was on the bench working and coaching against the Vancouver Canucks. He would have some intimate knowledge of the things that the Edmonton Oilers did to prepare for the Vancouver Canucks that I think could help him as he stepped into a job here if he turns out to be the guy. So yeah, I mean, I think there's some value in sort of that recent knowledge of working and coaching against the team that now you're trying to land the job with.
How about another second chance guy, guys? John Cooper is going to be retained, and he would like to keep his staff together, I would guess, in Tampa. But Jeff Blashill, does he get a chance somewhere? And he's been under the tutelage of Cooper for the last few years in Tampa.
I wonder about the other Jeff there. Jeff Halpern is a guy that name... And again, the longer you work with a guy like John Cooper, you would think at some point you'd get a chance to spread your wings, and you'd certainly have the credit of coaching under arguably the best coach in the National Hockey League these days. I mean, most guys do get a second chance, right?
Yep.
And so I would think at some point that Jeff Blashill, I haven't heard his name linked to the Vancouver Canucks, but I would think at some point he'll get another opportunity, and much like Travis Green, he'll be better for the first go-round, even though it didn't yield the results that he was looking for.
It's an important decision for Jim Rutherford, though. That's the good news, is that I don't think Jim Rutherford, at his stage in his career, guys, wants catastrophic failure as his last go-around in the National Hockey League. I mean, you have to believe, and this goes to the rest of the off-season maneuvers here, Jeff, every rock will be overturned here to try to make this team better for next year. Whether they can be successful is the problem.
I'm not worried about every rock being turned over. I'm worried about everything found under those rocks saying no to the Vancouver.
That is a problem, too.
One of those rocks is going to be playing second-line center.
Something biting them when they turn over the rock.
Exactly.
Leave me under this rock.
Exactly.
I thought Jim was pretty candid when he answered Patrick's question about his own future here, and he took ownership of the fact that things have not gone the way that he had hoped. He was brought in to build this team up, and a year ago it looked like they were moving in that direction, and here they are now, and now they're looking for a new head coach and some component parts that are going to be difficult to replace, and he's been candid about that too. The cost of acquisition here this summer, they're going to go big game hunting, but ultimately To what end? We'll have to wait and see. So, yeah, I mean, these aren't the best of times. I think that it's important that they acknowledge that and that there aren't any sort of pretenses that, oh, this past season was just a blip. No, I think the further we get from last season, that one's looking like the outlier now. And, it is going to be fascinating to see. Like, look, Patrick Allvin has to have some wins here this summer, and he's going to have some wins on the ice next year because it's the nature of the business. Yeah. And as you continue to churn, the coach, their coach, the guy that they identified, the guy that they pleaded and begged and opened the bank to stay here, he's gone. Now you move up the food chain. I think at some point here, there's going to be a fair bit more heat on Patrick Allvin as general manager.
As tough as it was for Canucks fans, and particularly those that liked Tocket and wanted him back to hear the news, think of how it lands with Allvin and Rutherford. They had staked so much on this guy. I remember the early days, talk this, talk that. Like they not only put him on a pedestal, he's like a deity up there for them. Like he's going to be the culture guy. He knows what it takes to win. And like him voluntarily saying no to them. Wow. I can only imagine the ego blow that was for the two of them. Okay, we got to talk Abby.
Yes.
Just really quickly, I am like, they were prepared to go to the ends of the earth for Rick Tocket.
They were.
Are they prepared to do that? Like, have they allotted that money now? Like, are they willing to do a big spend on somebody else?
I don't think 5x5 is the contract for I think that was the contract for Rick Tocket. Like, I think
somebody with a good resume?
Everybody else, I think, falls short of that.
I would agree with that. But have they moved a big pile of cash in the organization that they've allotted for the coaching position? Maybe not to the extent. The other one is, and a new coach obviously is going to have a say in some of the people that he brings in and gets to work with. But I thought it was fascinating that Rutherford said, like, they had already approved for Rick Tocket another full-time assistant coach. And I will never know now, but what road would they have traveled and who would that person have been and what areas? Was it as simple as power play? They had handed that to Yogi Saikovsky. He's still under their employ, but for how long, we'll see. So that's always, it starts at the top. They'll get their head coach, but how does he fill out his staff? I always am interested in the way that shakes down.
So as Manny tries to pad his resume, they get a win. They gambled on the split, so now home ice is absolutely in their favor. They could go for the sweep, of course, tomorrow night down in Coachella Valley, but they give up the early lead, but come back and win.
Yeah, resilient bunch. Like, give them credit. You start on the road. Coachella Valley opens the scoring on the first shot of the game, 1 minute and 36 seconds in, and this Abbotsford team is like Teflon right now. Like, big deal. All right, so we're behind. We got 59 minutes or 58 and a half. Let's go get it. And they turn that game on its ear. 2 goals just over 1 minute apart, midway through the first period. Jet Wu and Guillaume Brisebois scoring goals. And again, this just sort of speaks to the story of this Abbotsford team. I didn't watch them closely night in and night out down the stretch with that 13-game win streak, but these are the guys that did so much of the heavy lifting when everybody else was getting promoted to the National Hockey League. These were the guys that were there. They were the foundation and the bedrock for Abbotsford. And Danilo Klimovic also scored his first of the playoffs, and that's important too because this guy led the team in goals during the regular season. And I just think at this time of the year, you don't want to have your leading goal scorer go too long without doing what he does best and put a puck in the net. So now he can feel like he's contributing. Guys, 9 different goal scorers have scored the last 9 goals for the Abbotsford Canucks. Like, talk about team effort and pulling on the rope.
It's a fun team. Like, I was looking at their forward lines and defense combos, and there's attractive players sprinkled throughout the lineup. Terrific to come back as they did, and she loves as well. Who's last we talked, Jeff? We were talking about him staking a claim. Make sure you're in the number 3 in the organization. Okay, you're back at it tomorrow, huh?
It's a 6 o'clock start on a Saturday night, so a bit of a unique start time for a Saturday down in Palm Springs. But as you said, Blake, like a real opportunity here. You can't get the sweep out on the road without that first one. So barge through the door on opening night of round 2, do what you had to do, and now they've got a chance. I mean, all the pressure has been applied here. These shorter series, you take the first one, and the pressure goes right over to the other side. Coachella Valley was without Mitchell Stevens, who scored 3 of their 6 goals in the first round against Calgary. I don't know why he was out of the lineup, but I'm not sure that he'll be available. Canucks don't have to worry about that. They can't concern themselves with who is or isn't in the lineup on the other side. They have to some degree, I suppose, but they're just focusing on themselves And I think, as I've watched these games here in the playoffs closely now, like Archie Baines has 4 assists, but I wouldn't say he's been dominant at all. Atu Ratu has been relatively quiet. I would spin that as a positive, that the deeper they go, the chances go up that those guys are going to have the kind of nights that got the attention of the big team that got them to the National Hockey League. And so, they win the opener against Coachella Valley basically on the backs of these guys that were in the AHL all season. The NHL guys, there were moments in the hockey game, but deeper this series goes, I think you would expect that those guys will elevate as well. So that's just another thing. But look, 3-1 lead. They protected it well last night. It was a pretty solid road performance. Give Manny credit. And I think a lot of people now, guys, are not just watching the Abbotsford Canucks, but they're watching them through this lens of, all right, this guy that's done a nice job behind the bench could very well be the next head coach.
And guys, Artie Shilov's .934 save percentage.
He's been awesome. He's been awesome.
It is a rehabilitation of his prospect status here a little bit. So
he can play at that level. We know
that. We know.
And
it's just the next level. And it's a must-win for Coachella Valley. You'd have to sweep all 3 games here in Abbotsford if you lose tomorrow. So, baby Canucks looking great. So is Jeff. So is the scorecard. RinkWide Vancouver tomorrow night after the game. Thank you.
Yeah.